Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something that honestly underpins everything else in education. School behavior.
Absolutely.
We're not just talking about keeping kids quiet, are we? We're looking at how you actually build a whole school culture.
That's right. And our main source here, it frames good behavior as, well, the foundation for academic success, sure, but also for student well-being and, crucially, keeping good staff retention.
Okay, so where are we drawing this from primarily?
So the big one is the 2017 Tom Bennett review on school behavior. It's really significant because it actually spun out of an earlier review looking at initial teacher training, ITT.
Oh, okay.
And those initial findings, they sort of shifted the whole focus. They basically concluded that, yeah, skilled teachers are vital, obviously, but strong leadership and a unified whole school culture, those are actually bigger factors for success than any one teacher's skill set.
Right, so culture kind of trumps individual brilliance in a way.
In many ways, yes.
So our mission then, for you listening, is to figure out how leaders can actually design that winning culture.
Yeah.
How does the report define culture?
It's pretty neat, actually, just the way we do things around here. Simple, but covers everything. And we really shouldn't underestimate why we need this systemic approach.
Yeah.
There's often a real gap, between what school leaders think is happening
Right.
and what teachers and students are actually experiencing day to day.
And there's data showing this isn't just anecdotal, right? I remember seeing something pretty stark.
Oh, definitely. That 2010 PISA data was, well, quite shocking. It found 31%, nearly a third of pupils in England felt that in most or all lessons, there was just noise and disorder.
A third. That's huge. If that many students feel their learning is constantly being disrupted, you've got a major cultural issue, not just a few tricky classes.
Exactly. It's systemic. And look, to fix it, we need to think about what good behavior even means. It's not just stopping kids from being disruptive, that sort of negative good behavior, the absence of bad stuff. The real goal, the positive aim, is to actively create an environment where students can genuinely flourish as thinkers, as learners, as, well, decent human beings. Compliance is just the starting point, the thing that makes the real learning possible.
Okay, got it. So let's unpack this blueprint. If leaders need to be, as you say, conscious architects of this culture, what are the absolute must-haves? The things successful schools always seem to do, regardless of, say, their location or student intake.
Well, the consistency across these successful schools is really striking. It always starts with the leadership, committed leadership, and crucially, visible leadership.
Visible meaning, not stuck in the office.
Exactly. Not managing by email. They are physically present. You see them at the gates in the morning, walking the corridors between lessons, in the canteen at lunch, popping into classrooms unannounced.
Right.
This constant presence, it does two things. It nips potential issues in the bud, sure, but it also sends this powerful nonverbal message. We're watching, we care, and the standards apply everywhere, all the time.
Yeah, I've read about leaders like Sir Paul Grant at Robert Clack School doing exactly that. Apparently, he was everywhere, knew students' names,
That's the model.
and would have these quick, positive chats. It shifts things, doesn't it? From just catching rule breakers to actually building relationships.
That relational aspect is key. It underpins the next essential feature, absolute clarity and consistency. The expectations, they have to be realistic, yes, but also really detailed. And everyone, staff, students, parents needs to understand them clearly.
Okay, Claire.
And consistency. The report basically says inconsistency is the absolute killer of effective behavior management.
But hang on, consistency sounds, well, exhausting. How does a leader make sure every single person, from the veteran teacher to a supply teacher who's just in for the day, follows every detailed routine perfectly? Isn't that just creating a mountain of rules?
That's a fair question, and it leads directly to the next point. Attention to detail. It sounds maybe a bit obsessive, but successful schools are incredibly thorough. They leave very little to chance.
How so?
Because they get that every little detail feeds back into the culture. How kids move between lessons, how staff manage the queue for the bus, how equipment is given out and collected. It all reinforces the way we do things around here.
So it's the constant repetition, the drilling down into the tiny things that makes the standards feel normal, almost automatic.
Precisely. And driving that requires real staff commitment, which means leaders need to actively curate their teams, especially the leadership team. They need people who aren't just going along with it, but are genuinely loyal to the vision. Because the report is pretty blunt here. If staff aren't actively supporting the behavior strategy, they're effectively undermining it, whether they mean to or not.
That sounds like a good lead to some tough conversations, maybe even difficult decisions about staffing. I'm thinking of that case study, Allison Colwell at Eggs Fleet Academy.
Ah, yes. That's a powerful example of this in action.
Didn't she bring in monitoring for all staff,
Mhm.
specifically on how they were implementing the behavior approach?
She did. And it was, well, transformative, but also disruptive. Lots of staff ended up leaving. Some resigned, some were managed out. She essentially had to rebuild the leadership team to get that absolute alignment and shared culture.
Wow, that really shows the sheer effort and sometimes the hard choices involved in achieving that level of consistency. It's not just a policy document, it's lived practice.
Absolutely. Staff alignment is non-negotiable for a strong culture. Everyone has to be singing from the same hymn sheet, using the same routines, giving the same responses.
Okay, so we've got these core features: visible leadership, clarity, consistency, attention to detail, and staff commitment. Let's shift gears now to the how. How do leaders actually build this culture day to day, from abstract ideas to concrete actions?
Right. This is about the deliberate design. It starts with the leader asking a really fundamental question. What do I want all students to do, routinely, almost without thinking?
Okay.
And the answer to that needs to be translated into very specific, standardized routines, things everyone does the same way, every time.
Like walking on one side of the corridor, or the exact way you line up for lunch,
Yeah.
or how you enter a classroom.
Exactly, those kinds of things. They become the school's habits, its muscle memory. And there's actually some interesting cognitive science behind why this is so powerful.
Oh, go on.
Well, by standardizing these everyday behaviors, you reduce the cognitive load for everyone. Students aren't constantly trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do now? How does this teacher want it done?
Ah, I see.
When it's automatic, their mental energy is freed up for the actual learning. So, in a way, consistency in routines is actually a direct booster for academic focus.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But getting everyone on board with these routines requires more than just listing them, surely. You mentioned vague demands don't work.
No, absolutely not. Leaders have to unpack the what with the how, really concrete examples, no room for interpretation.
So instead of saying, we need to recognize good behavior more,
Right, that's too woolly. A leader needs to say something like, okay, at the end of Friday assembly, I want to see merits given out for demonstrating behavior X and Y this week. I want those students caught up onto the stage, and I expect everyone to applaud for a full 10 seconds.
that's specific.
Yes, that level of detail leaves no doubt about what's expected. It guarantees everyone understands the goal and the precise method.
And this whole culture, it needs to be established right from the start, doesn't it? You can't just suddenly introduce it halfway through the year. Staff need training beforehand. Students need induction.
Front-loading is critical. The famous example, of course, is Michaela Community School. They have that intensive boot camp for all New Year Sevens.
Right, the week-long induction.
Exactly. It's all about explicitly teaching and practicing the school's very specific rules and social norms before they even really start lessons. Well, what's also interesting is they recognize it needs upkeep. They even run a boot camp rebooted for year 9s.
Or refresher course, essentially.
Yeah, to reinforce those expectations as students get older.
Now, that intent approach, the bootcamp idea, it sounds quite rigid, maybe even controversial to some. But the source seems to frame it as almost essential for quickly establishing those non-negotiable standards. It must require ongoing support for the staff, though.
Oh, definitely. And that's where the continuous professional development, the CPD, comes in. It needs to be focused and ongoing, structured around what the report calls the 3 R's of training.
The 3 R's. Okay, let's break those down. What are they?
So the first R is routines. This is about constantly practicing and refining those automated classroom processes, how lessons start, how transitions happen, how equipment is managed, making them smooth and automatic.
Okay, routines. What's the second?
Reactions responses. This is crucial. It's about giving staff a toolkit of specific practice strategies for dealing with challenging behavior. How to de-escalate, how to respond proportionally, maybe using specific phrases or even nonverbal cues to avoid making things worse.
Practical skills for handling tricky moments.
Got it.
Got it. And the third R.
Relationships. And this isn't just about being friendly. It's about consciously and deliberately building relationships based on trust, dignity, and mutual respect. It connects back to that visible leadership idea. Leaders modeling positive interactions support staff in doing the same.
Routines, reactions, relationships. And you're saying this needs constant work, not just a one-off training day.
Absolutely. It's about practice, feedback, refinement, ongoing.
And then, inevitably, rules will still be broken sometimes. What happens then? How does the culture reply?
The key here, quoting behavior expert Bill Rogers, who's referenced in the report, is that the certainty in a consequence matters far more than its severity.
Certainty over severity. Explain that.
It's a psychological thing again. If a student knows with absolute certainty that doing X will always lead to consequence Y, that predictability changes behavior much more effectively than having a really harsh consequence that only happens sometimes, or that they think they can get away with. Consistency again.
Right. The inevitability of the response is the deterrent. Okay. Let's talk about some specific structures schools use. What about students who genuinely struggle to meet the mainstream expectations, even with all this in place?
That brings us to internal inclusion units, or IIUs. The report is quite clear. In successful schools, these are seen as positive, supportive structures, not dumping grounds or signs of failure.
So it's an acknowledgement that one size doesn't fit all.
Precisely. Leaders recognize that while inclusion is the goal, the mainstream classroom, even a well-run one, might not be the right environment to meet every single student's specific needs at all times.
And these IIUs, they're not just empty rooms for kids to sit in, are they?
No, far from it. Good ones are properly staffed with trained professionals. They offer targeted support, maybe a modified curriculum, work on social skills, anger management, whatever is needed. The aim is always eventual reintegration back into the mainstream, but with the skills to succeed.
Like Passmore's Academy's The Egg Unit. I read it was deliberately placed centrally in the school.
Yes, exactly. That sends a message. These students are still part of the community. They're getting help, not being hidden away.
And the report makes a really important distinction here, doesn't it? That just having a student physically present in a classroom where they can't cope, without proper support or strategies to help them reintegrate socially and academically, well, it's not inclusion. It's actually harmful.
It's harmful for everyone involved. The student fails, the teacher can't teach effectively, and the learning of other students is disrupted. Real inclusion requires strategy and support.
Okay, moving on to other tools or levers schools might use. Technology, specifically mobile phones.
Ah, yes. The report urges real caution here, maybe even more than caution.
And there's some compelling data linked in the source, isn't there? The London School of Economics study.
That's the one. Really interesting findings. They found that when schools banned unrestricted access to mobile phones, students' test scores went up, on average by about 6.4%.
6.4%. That sounds significant.
It is. The researchers calculated it was roughly equivalent to gaining an extra 5 days of teaching time per student per year, just by removing that distraction.
Wow. And it's not just the student using the phone, is it? It's the ripple effect.
Exactly. The whispers, the reactions from others, the teacher having to deal with it. It eats into learning time significantly. The report strongly suggests that, for the sake of culture and focus, banning them during the school day is a pretty clear win.
Okay. What about something seemingly simpler, like school uniforms?
Uniforms are interesting. The report views them mainly as symbolic levers. Having a uniform policy itself doesn't achieve much.
It's the follow-through that matters.
Entirely. If the school doesn't consistently insist on the uniform being worn correctly, shirts tucked in, proper shoes, whatever the rules are, then the uniform actually becomes counterproductive. It just becomes another visible symbol of the school's inconsistency and low standards.
So if you have one, you have to enforce it meticulously, otherwise it harms the culture.
Precisely.
And finally, there's this relentless focus on time itself.
Yes. Timekeeping is treated as a fundamental aspect of the culture. Attendance, punctuality, the expectation is 100%, and it's tracked closely, often in real time.
And that attitude extends into the classroom.
Absolutely. Time in lessons is seen as incredibly precious. There's very little tolerance for wasting it, either by staff or students. Being on time, starting lessons promptly, using every minute effectively, it's all part of that respect for the learning process. It's another behavioral marker.
Okay, so pulling all this together, the message seems to be that creating a successful school culture requires a really profound shift for leaders. You have to move away from just reacting to problems as they pop up.
Which is exhausting and often ineffective.
And instead become, as you said earlier, the conscious architect, proactively designing how things are done, embedding habits, and demanding that crystal clarity, and above all, that unwavering consistency.
That's the core message. It's about designing for habitual success.
So let's wrap up with that provocative thought. The report mentions that the advice on what makes effective leadership and good behavior management, well, it hasn't actually changed much for decades. The knowledge is out there.
It really hasn't. The research findings are remarkably consistent over time. We basically know what works.
So if we know what works, why do so many schools still struggle to implement it consistently? Why isn't this blueprint just standard practice everywhere? What's the biggest barrier if it's not a lack of knowledge?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The report suggests the biggest hurdles are often internal, and these hurdles, they really contribute to that staff burnout and turnover we talked about earlier.
Internal hurdles like what?
Well, one major one is what the report calls limiting beliefs. It's when leaders or staff, perhaps unconsciously, believe that their students just can't meet high behavioral or academic standards, maybe because of their background or circumstances.
So a sort of soft bigotry of low expectations.
Essentially, yes. And that belief, even if unspoken, allows low standards to persist. It stops leaders from demanding what's necessary. Another huge practical barrier is simply workload. Failing to structure things so that staff actually have the time to do the crucial stuff, monitor behavior properly, follow up consistently on incidents, engage in that vital CPD.
Right. If teachers are drowning in marking or admin, they can't be consistently present and proactive in the corridors or refining their practice.
Exactly. And when that consistency breaks down because the system doesn't support it, it's the staff on the front line trying to hold the line who suffer. So the challenge for leaders is often about looking beyond their own school's immediate context, challenging those limiting beliefs about what's possible, and ensuring the operational structures actually enable the culture they want to build rather than hindering it.